In the creatively bankrupt industry that is Hollywood, there is two go-to methods, two tried and true strategies that studios will employ when they need some quick cash grabs. The first, and most common thanks to Disney, is live-action remakes of beloved animated films. And now we're seeing this scourge leak elsewhere with How to Train Your Dragon now getting a live-action remake. Like, How to Train Your Dragon doesn't even have the courtesy of being a reimagining of the animation that it's based on. It seems to be a one-for-one, shot-for-shot remake, but with some live-action actors and CGI. So it's still animation in a lot of places, just a different kind. Why even fucking bother? I know why studios do it, because people, for some reason, just pull money out their ass to go see it. But I'm getting off on a tangent. I'm not going to keep ranting here. Maybe I'll save that for another video. The other strategy Hollywood likes to employ when they're in desperate need of quick cash is making an unnecessary sequel to a beloved film a decade or 2 decades ago, which is what Gladiator 2 is. From the time the first trailer dropped, I didn't have a whole lot of hope for this film because why the fuck are you making a Gladiator 2 sequel 24 years later? The first Gladiator was an incredible film that was a complete package that doesn't really have any need for a sequel. And most of the time when studios try this, where they make this sequel so many years later, they're trash, absolute dog shit. And the trailer didn't sell me on this being great or anything, but people did. When the reviews started coming out and my chat was talking about Gladiator 2, they were all saying that it's really solid and they did a super good job. So I decided to go see it today, smoke 'em if you got 'em. So I burnt rubber getting to the theater to plop my ass in a front row seat, unfortunately, because that was the only seats available for the matinee I went to this afternoon. So I sat there with some neck pain staring up at the screen like a baby bird waiting to be fed. And overall, I thought the film was solid. I was entertained for the most part. But I still believe this was just a pretty unnecessary sequel that just served to be a quick infusion of cash to the studio because everyone knows Gladiator 1, so it was guaranteed to get a lot of peepers on it. In a lot of ways, Gladiator 2 just kind of retells similar story beats from Gladiator 1, but does it worse. It's like a diet version of some of Gladiator 1's best hits. A lot of the story beats that were done really well in the first movie get a great value Fortnite skin in this movie. And that's a little harsh because it's not like they're horrible, like they don't fall flat, it's not like a complete fucking blunder. But it's just hard to watch this and not compare it to the first one with how much better it was in those aspects because it does have very similar story beats. Now, it's not a one-to-one carbon copy or anything. Like Gladiator 2 does introduce a lot of new things, and some of them are good, some of them are not. I'll go ahead and start with the things I liked. Visually, I think the film is strong. I think the visuals slap for the most part. I know a lot of people pointed out inaccuracies with the time period, like the dogs or something aren't time period accurate. I could wipe my ass with that. I don't really give a fuck. That didn't take me out of it. It didn't break my immersion. I think for the most part, they committed to going over the top Rome, and they did a good job with that. I think they delivered on it. The action was pretty crisp. It was pretty brutal, visceral. I do think they succeeded there. And I do think the main character, Lucius, was very good, especially considering the big shoes to fill with Maximus from the first film. I think it's a great performance here that unfortunately gets buried by some really odd writing decisions. I can't even call it dumpster tier because it's not fucking atrocious, but just some really confusing things that only serve to weaken Lucius narratively. To explain what I mean, I'll go ahead and give you the bare bones birthday suit, the skeleton outline of the plot. Lucius is the son of Maximus. His mother sends him away to keep him safe after the death of Maximus. Years later, the general of the Roman army leads a charge against the place where Lucius is at. Lucius eventually gets taken as a slave and bought by Denzel Washington's character as a gladiator to fight for the amusement of the emperors in Rome. Now, when the general took control of the area Lucius was at, he directly ordered one of the archers to be killed. That archer was the wife of Lucius. So this makes him hate the general. He already had a deep hatred of Rome, and now he is a gladiator there. Super straightforward, and he carries this for 90% of the film until all of a sudden he doesn't. So you spend the whole film with him hating Rome bitterly, and rightfully so with everything he's been through. And then there's a moment where the general gets a little more fleshed out. The general and him square off, and it's what he wanted. He just wants to kill the general for what happened to his wife, and he hates Rome. He even tried to kill one of the emperors. The emperors are brothers, so there's two. He shot a crossbow at them. It missed, but like he also doesn't like anything about Rome, doesn't like the general. The general then reveals to him like a little bit more information, and then they immediately like share kind of a heart-to-heart, and Lucius now all of a sudden, loves and appreciates the general, and now is willing to die for Rome. Now all of a sudden he's willing to just stake everything for the glory of Rome, to realize the dream that his grandfather had of Rome. And all of it happens like that. It's not a gradual buildup or anything. Also, when he reconnects with his mother after, winning a couple bouts in the arena, after like the iconic sand thing that he emulates, he connects with his mother, but he literally screams at her, says like, that boy that you sent away is dead. He yells at her, get the fuck out. Like, he hates his mother. Actual like temper tantrum, it's not a phase mom type energy. And then only like 5 scenes later, he loves his mother and wants to do everything he can to save her. And all of these are like logical places for him to have eventually gotten to, but it happens so quick, like so abruptly, that it feels like he just impulsively like latches onto something and is more than willing to just let it go, like instantly. It makes sense narratively how he gets there, but it just happens too quickly in the movie. They don't build up to it. It just kind of happens. And I do think that there is writing around the character that just doesn't work. Like, Lucius and the actor do a really good job of making him badass. He is a capable fighter, he's a good leader, and it's not like there's anything in there that just feels like an ass pull moment. I do think all of it feels earned and sensible. It just happens so quickly, and there's times where the writing just kind of betrays it. Like, this is probably a big spoiler warning, but in the time where the general is no longer around, Lucius tries to command that army by just sending a ring saying, hey, I'm Lucius. And no one's ever met him, by the way. No one even knew he was alive. He wasn't using the name Lucius throughout the film or anything. No one even knows who the fuck this is, but he delivers the general's ring to the army that the general commands, and somehow the army just decides, okay, we're going to follow this mysterious guy who had this ring. Like, that's a bit of a leap. And it's not necessarily like Lucius or the actor's fault. Like, that's just kind of silly writing, in my opinion. Like, it's cool visually to see, but there had to be another way of getting to that point. Like, it just feels like where it gets is cool, but it gets there in ways that I don't think work super well. But anyway, I think for the most part, like, the film is solid, but there are 2 characters I think are just terrible, and it's the emperors. I thought the brother emperors were just awful. It was just like so over the top and in your face that it just became annoying, and it like reminded you that this is a movie every time they're on screen, because it felt like you were watching Thespian Troupe Drama Club monologues where they just go so big and so silly with it. Like, for example, I really like Joseph Quinn. He is one of the brother emperors here, and I just do not think it fit at all. So, like, I'm trying not to spoil too many things here, but this is probably not a spoiler. Like, in the scene during one of the battles, in the iconic, thumbs up, thumbs down type shit, well, he's like channeling the gods, and he actually does this. I'm not shitting you. And he does that for a while before like bringing it down into one of these. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, that's not, especially when you compare it to how great the villain was in Gladiator 1, to have the 2 brother emperors come here and do that kind of performance is just, it's laughable. And it's not supposed to be. Like, I know they're supposed to be kind of incompetent with the way the movie portrays them. And the other brother that's not Joseph Quinn, I don't even know their characters' names, by the way. I actually cannot remember. They were just pretty annoying. But Joseph Quinn's brother, the other emperor, I'm pretty sure every scene he is screaming. Like, he is yelling in pretty much every scene he's in, or he's like doing cartoonish laughs like, violence, war, let them eat war, let them eat war. And it's just so dumb. Like, I just don't think it fit at all. I can recognize that was the goal of the characters, to be pretty unserious and silly and not take them too seriously, because there is a bigger villain behind the scenes, not getting into spoilers, but come on. There had to be some kind of middle ground to reach, because right now I just think those 2 characters kill this film's momentum pretty often and take wind out of its sails, because you'll have like a good scene that happens and then an emperor will come through Remarkable, remarkable, glorious, absolutely magnificent, good sir. I must have your name. What is your name? Give me your name. Every scene they are in, they are the worst part of the scene. They are evil for the sake of evil. They don't even have any real motivation at all. They are so one-dimensional. Like they don't have, like they're not character. They're not characters. They're caricatures, and that just I feel like that's so underwhelming. They didn't have to be. I feel like there was definitely something cool they could have done with them, but they just abandoned it because there is a lot of characters here. Like it is a movie that has a lot of characters that you're supposed to care about or root for or root against. So maybe it just fell to the back burner and they just didn't bother. The other characters I do think around them are good. Lucilla, while not having a major role or anything, when she's there, she is doing a good job of pushing things forward. So she made the decision of sending Lucius away. She regrets it. She wants to fix things for the future. Her son's back in the fold, and she wants to, deliver the Rome that was the grandfather's dream and do her best to help Lucius. Pedro Pascal plays General Acacius, and I think he does a really decent job. Although I don't think he was given a whole ton to do, unfortunately. Like, I thought he was going to be a much bigger character in this movie, but he's kind of not. But he does a good job of balancing, like, the guy who knows the emperors are assholes, that they're not feeding people, and he wants, like, kind of the best for Rome, but he also still has a duty to them. Like, I do think he does a good job with it. Even though it's not, like, amazing, it's still pretty decent. And then Denzel Washington's character, Macrinus, sometimes is great, and then other times is just not good. Like, the character will come up with these great plans and then all of a sudden decide, you know what, I think I'm just going to engage in fisticuffs here against someone that is clearly one of the best fighters Rome has ever seen. I'll go ahead and fight him even though I have not been a fighter this entire movie. So you're like scratching your head like, what? Why would you do that? Like, your whole thing is like plans and being 2 steps ahead, and now you're just gonna fight a guy you have no chance against. What the fuck is, like, what? So, like, sometimes Macrinus is great, and other times he's making decisions like that. And he is a character that pushes everything forward by making Lucius a gladiator. And he is a character that's slowly gathering power behind the scenes. He's crafting these elaborate plans. He's scheming. He's manipulating. Like, he just is a cunning individual who is clearly working towards some big goals. And it's cool, but I also feel like that character just gets lucky almost entirely. Like, there's a whole monologue he has about being chosen by the gods, and that's, like, super accurate. He was chosen by the writers just to have, like, this plot armor where things just kind of work out magically for him. Like, things that he couldn't possibly have known or had any control over. Things just kind of fell into place exactly how they needed to for his plans to work. Like, I think Denzel Washington's a great actor, and I do think this character is a strong character, but there are times where I'm like, okay, really? This is a big spoiler warning, but the way that he gets Lucius to fight the general, which is the promise they made in the beginning where Lucius would, do his best for Macrinus as long as Macrinus delivers the general's head, the way that he eventually puts those chess pieces on the board was entirely by accident. Truly by just happenstance. Because the general was working on a plot behind the scenes that one of the people at the facility just happened to overhear, relay to one of the guys that happens to be indebted to Macrinus, who just happens to be, like, really easy to squeeze information out of. So he hears it, and then it's like, oh, okay, I'll just go ahead and turn him in. And that's kind of how it happens. But if that plan was never in place, like if the general was never doing that plan, which Macrinus had no idea he ever was, then there would never be a way for him to have ever delivered on that deal of the general and Lucius fighting. But it worked out for him magically. But it is still cool to see it work out for him because, it's a movie. Like, the plans that he creates, they're gonna come to fruition. It's just, I would have liked if his plans were actually because of his, like, brilliant strategy. And some of them are. Like, towards the end, him gaining power, he had a good plan for overall, until eventually his plan was as simple as it gets of just kill, now I'm in charge. Like, that's a pretty simple plan. That's not, like, a galaxy brain scheme. But up until that point, like, when he was gathering power in, like, the shadows and all that, it was pretty smart stuff that he was putting into play. Overall, I didn't regret my time watching the film or anything, but it really is just a movie that was made because the studio execs were like, We need something that'll generate money no matter what. What kind of a beloved property we have in the back burner in the toy box collecting dust? Gladiator? Yeah, let's make a sequel for it. And then they just worked backwards from there. It was never a, we've got this amazing story we want to tell for Gladiator 2. It's going to be amazing. It was always just, we need a sequel to something beloved, so they did this. Which isn't the worst thing in the world, I suppose, because at least it's enjoyable. A lot of these sequels that come out so many years later are just downright unwatchable. This one is still a fun movie. It's just, it copies a lot of the homework from the first Gladiator, just a little worse. So, I mean, if you just want more Gladiator combat, though, this shit's gonna slap for you, I have no doubt. Anyway, though, that's really about it. So, yeah.